So, man, look, this isn't your situation. I'm pretty sure that's not your situation simply because you've had a coach before. But there are one thing I hear frequently is that, you know what, I want to go about this on my own simply because I feel that this way I will learn more without a coach. But what ends up happening is at best you end up maybe just reinventing the wheel. A good coach should not only get you there, but there should be an educational component to the process. Because after all, this is your bodybuilding, this is your body. And it's important that a coach relay, why, we're doing this or maybe not doing that. But again, this is not your situation. You're prepping yourself. So I'd say, for starters, a good place to start doing your research is going to be our contest prep positioning course that we have here on the Vault. I think it's going to help you lay out a lot of the framework for this contest prep. One thing that I go over is how it really does matter what sort of shape you start in. Personally, I prefer my athletes to be anywhere between 15 to 10% above the goal weight. So you've prepped before, so you probably have a general idea of where it is that might be located. And yeah, just simply by starting with only X amount of pounds to lose, it's going to better your chances and make you a little bit more resistant to some of the bad moves here and there that might take place. And look, having a coach doesn't make you immune to this. One thing I tell my athletes is that, at the end of the prep, I will go over what were probably the wrong turns I took. But again, since there's a conflict of interest here, you're going to be your own coach. There's more likely than not that, hey, you're probably going to have a few more errors than had you had a more experienced set of eyes guiding you. So we'll start with that. You want to be in a good position, body weight wise, body comp wise, when you do start your prep. Do check out that course. It's going to help you, again, create a lot of that framework. And then after that, I'd say the going rate for the length of a most successful contest preps is going to be somewhere around 20 to 24 weeks. I'd say in your case, just to have a little buffer there, I'd probably give myself anywhere between 24 to 30 weeks. Now that we have that out the way, some of the general framework, again, you will find a lot of this in that course, the contest prep positioning. But now that we have that out the way, it's like, okay, of course, we're going to weigh ourselves every day in the morning after using the bathroom, no clothes. And try to keep your sleep and awake times consistent, which I think is just something that's important for most serious athletes, but especially when you are trying to collect body weight data throughout your contest prep. And what I'd say is you want to sit on an intake, a combination of calories, cardio, steps, that makes sense, and you want to examine the data, I'd say every 3 weeks for males and every 4 weeks for females. That's about how long it takes to have a firm understanding of what is going on. So it might seem like overkill to wait this long, right? To wait this long on a combination of calories, cardio, and steps that, might not be exactly where they need to be. But I'll tell you what, when it comes to prepping, folks, so quite often the best move is the move you don't make. And to a large extent, it is a game of chicken, a game of wits, and a physique that has to go, that, is, I guess, exposed to less harsh of elements. So, they're exposed to slightly more calories, slightly less cardio, slightly less steps, usually tends to look better at the end of it. Also, on the recovery end of it, they tend to also thrive there just a bit better than their counterparts. It might have had to, make 8 adjustments as opposed to maybe the 5 adjustments that someone who really took their time to confirm that what they were doing wasn't working the way they wanted it to. So yes, every 3 to 4 weeks is how long you should sit on an intake and decide whether or not this current combination of, again, calories, cardio, and steps is working or not. There is, however, one thing that can completely nullify what we might see on the scale, and that is going to be what we see visually, because again, this is a subjective sport. So at the end of the day, it really is about what you look like. However, quite often people aren't as precise about controlling the environment in which they take their pictures. So for me personally, I like a front relax, I like a back relax, and I like these to be videos, not pictures, just because when you do take pictures, sometimes, this muscle group can flicker, and like your legs might be, more well flexed in one set of video compared to the last time set of, and it might give you the illusion that you are leaner than you actually are. So front and back relax, they're poses that are where there's usually more consistency once you learn to nail those. They're quite consistent, but video also gives you a chance to see any difference in flickering from one set of visual data to the next week's set of visual data. So that I would do weekly. Again, front and back relax. Don't just look for the poses, but also look for things that might be going on as you transition from one pose to the next. Because quite often, I will catch something like, oh, there's a quad line coming across that didn't run that high last week. So video is better than pictures. And then I think finally, in order to really make this visual data work, remember I talked about I want it in the right environment, which really just means the right lighting. So my order of operation is going to be the camera has to be between you and a light source. Something that most people have access to is windows. So I've been using the old windowsill as a strong recommendation for my athletes. This is how I've done it for years. So there's a natural light from the outside, the camera's in the windowsill, and then you are behind it. So the order again should be light source, camera in the middle, and then you on this side. And that's how you should take your front and back relax video shots. To me, in many cases, especially when it's obvious, when you are not losing at a rate that keeps you on schedule, sometimes the video wins. As a matter of fact, I'd say quite often the video does win. Where if, hey, maybe I'm like a quarter of a pound, half a pound heavier than I would like to be at the end of this 3-week stretch. If the video tells me otherwise, then okay, the video usually wins, especially when it comes to close calls where you're very close to losing at a rate. When you're very close to losing, close to that weight loss margin that is appropriate for that chunk of time. So yes. Quite often, it's the visual data that will save you from making an adjustment that you didn't have to make in order to keep progressing, which again, at the end of the prep, will definitely pay dividend in regards to the final product, but also in regards to the recovery period afterwards. Finally, I think instead of taking the calipers to yourself, that can be quite difficult. I'd imagine someone who is very well versed at the caliper game, doing it on themselves would be pretty hard. So I think a better option here, along with the weigh-ins, along with the video, would probably be to take measurements of your midsection and your hips. And I think these two areas are very telling, because the way most people tend to lean out is going to be, it's the center mass that comes in last, right? So we kind of get lean in a farmer tan sort of way. And you can see this with most people who are reasonably fit. We don't have a whole lot of fat in our forearms, in our calves, and it's more like above the knee and below the armpits, where we tend to store the majority of our body fat. And that circle, this imaginary circle, what it's going to do is, you get leaner, it's going to kind of just get smaller and smaller and smaller. So we should see significant changes in our center mass, so in our midsection and around our hips. So I'd say this, along with what you are looking for, that's what you should be looking for. You should be looking for a farmer tan of leanness that is slowly climbing towards the center of your body when you are looking at your video data. So I think combining these three things is going to be your best bet to confirm that you are headed in the right direction. So again, I'd say, of course, like the weigh-ins are probably, especially when you give yourself 3 to 4 weeks, I think that's pretty solid data that you can rely on as to whether or not you want to make changes. But you also want to supplement that with video data and then some measurements, so that when you are in a place where you have to make those close calls, do I add cardio? Do I add steps? Do I remove some food? You can take those things into consideration. And sometimes when it comes to those very close calls where it's like you almost lost the amount of weight that you needed to lose, but not quite, you might have a 2 to 3 vote via the measurements and what you see in video. So that would be my recommendation when it comes to the weigh-ins. Giving yourself enough time, 3 to 4 weeks, to decide whether or not this is working. But you also want help from the visual data, and I think measurements would be a great way to go about this. And to retrace my steps, check out our contest prep positioning course, as it will give you examples, show you actually how to put yourself in the best position so that you are more likely than not to reach the sort of contest shape you are after. And finally, give yourself at least 24 weeks, minimum of 30. And I think if you do that, it will definitely better your chances of having a successful prep while going at it alone.